Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this session of Coacharya. Awake, aware, arise. Today's topic is about the individual and the context. I will start by talking about a little about the introduction of the topic and introduce the panel, and then they will take it forward. Okay. The individual and the context. A large part of our beliefs, values, and choices are determined by our unique personal context, as also by the imperatives of the time that we live in. Thus, there is a constant interplay between our personal predispositions and the larger contextual forces. This session will explore this interplay through a bifocal lens, EUM, Existential Universe Mapper, which looks at both the individual and the context. The main emphasis will be on exploring the impact of living in an interconnected global village on individual well-being and development. To take this forward, we have a panel, Ashok, Malhotra, and Roop Sen. Ashok is the managing director of Reflexive Lenses Consulting Private Limited and is based out of Bangalore. He works with individuals, groups, and organizations in areas such as personal growth, leadership development, team building, diversity and inclusion, gender relation, organization, culture, and development. Understanding the salient features of the Indian identity is of special interest to him. He has authored a framework and suite of tools called EUM for mapping the individual identity and organization culture. This has been deployed in more than 100 organizations covering more than 5,000 people. The findings from this data are available in his latest book, Indian Managers and Organizations, Boons and Burdens. His other publications include Child Man, The Selfless Narcissist. Ashok is one of the founders of Sumedas, which is an academy for human context. Welcome, Ashok.
Thank you. Thank you, Aishwarya.
We have Roop Sen. He is a facilitator, coach, and an organizational consultant. He's process worker by training and a EUM practitioner. He's the managing partner of Change Mantras, a firm that specializes in leadership and organizational development. He studied at the Calcutta University with economics as a major. Roop started his career in 1999 in the development sector, where he worked with multi-stakeholder systems on human migration, youth development, and social defense against violence of vulnerable communities. He worked as the regional director for India, Bangladesh, and Nepal for an international development agency, Group Development, which specializes on special social policy, law, and bilateral instruments. He interned on process work in Sumedas, which is an academy for human context from 2006 to 11, and became a fellow of the institution and has been a facilitator of 25 labs for the last 10 years for youth and adults. In 2012, he founded Change Mantras, which in the last 8 years has worked with organizations from the social and corporate sector in India, UK, and Japan. In the same year, he also founded a non-profit organization, Sanjog, that works on social policy, systems, and community empowerment to address organized crime and violence against children and youth. Roop is the co-author of Power, Sexuality, and Gender Dynamics at Work, a book to be published by Sage Publications that explores how gender and sexual diversity in organizations manifest in phenomena that need nuanced policy making and implementation in corporate and non-corporate organizations. Welcome, Roop, and over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aishwarya. It's a privilege to be having this opportunity of interacting with people from wide variety, range of backgrounds, I presume. Though it's not really that much as interactive as one would like it to be. But I hope that as we go along, we'll be able to make it a little more interactive. Please join in with your comments, questions, observations, either through the chat box or as and when you feel like, speaking and being part of the panel, raise your hand and Aishwarya will admit you in. Is that right, Aishwarya?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. What we intend to cover uh, in this hour and a half are essentially three things. One, spend a little bit of time on understanding what is the nature of relatedness between an individual and the system to which the individual belongs, be it the organization, family, whatever. To introduce you to a framework which Aishwarya talked about, EUM, Existential Universe Mapper, and how it looks at both the individual and the organization. And three, we will spend some time on looking at the macro context of the times that we are living in and how do they seem like when you see them through the Hume lens, and what are some of its implications for us as individuals to be living in today's world. This is what we intend to do, and I think the more you engage and participate, uh, the more enriching this experience will be. Uh, and Roop and I will be working with you on this. Let me invite Roop to make in his login statement before we take it further. Roop, over to you.
Thank you, Aishwarya. Thank you, Ashok. I mean, thanks to both of you for inviting me to this space. And it's always such a privilege to work with you, Ashok. So I'm very excited about today's session. And I think, I mean, you've pretty much set the context. I have nothing really to add, except that, what we are hoping is that through the session, one, in my experience, the Hume is a certain way of looking at oneself and organizations in the larger context. And it's an extremely powerful sort of an instrument. And I hope this session will give you just a glimpse of it in terms of, sort of give you a flavor. And that's our whole intent, is to, look at the underlying philosophy that guides the existential universal mapper. So I hope this is very meaningful for you. I'm here to have fun.
Okay, you know, one of the very significant things, and I think Kurt Lewin, who's in many ways one of the earliest behavioral scientists, had put in very, very uh, accurately through his equation: behavior is a function of self and system. It is only in this interplay between the self and the system that actually you can say what is happening. Looking at an individual in isolation or looking at the system or organization in isolation doesn't make too much sense unless you look at the interplay between the individual and the system to which the individual belongs, or the situation in which the individual. Each one of us is part of multiple systems. We are part of a family, we are part of a work group, we are part of a social circle, we are part of a society, we are part of a nation. At a larger level, we are part of the human collective, we are part of the universe as such. So we are part of multiple systems. And in each of these systems, we don't feel, think, and behave in an identical manner. Our feelings, thoughts, and actions vary from system to system. In one system, I experience myself in one way. In another system, I would probably experience myself in another way. So, how I engage very much depends on the system in which I am. Simultaneously, not everyone in the same system behaves in the same way. Not all members of a family behave in the same way. Each member of a family, a group, an organization behaves in different ways. So it is essentially both these factors and how they are influencing each other. It's the interplay between these two which becomes critical. One of the things about human beings is that human beings don't just adapt to their situation, they also strive to impact their situation. As it is said, human beings don't just perceive, but they also conceive. They conceive of a different reality, not just the reality as it is, and they work towards creating that reality as they want it to be. So they are all the time we are impacted by the system, and we also impact the system. So it's a relationship of interdependence. It is not a relationship where only the system is impacting the individual, that's clear, or only the individual is impacting the system. The two are all the time interacting and impacting each other. So there is an influence which is flowing from the individual to the system. So what belongs to the individual and what belongs to the system is very difficult to, segregate. You can't say this belongs to the individual or this belongs to the system. A classical example of it, of course, is a traffic jam. A traffic jam gets created because all the people in that who are there are creating that traffic jam. But once you are caught in a traffic jam, you are a victim of the traffic jam. So are you a creator of the traffic jam or are you a victim of the traffic jam? So in our relatedness with systems is like that we are creating the system and we are also getting impacted by the system. And hence, in this entire discussion as we go along, we would be focusing on this plurality, this interplay between the individual and the context of the system to which the individual belongs. Rup, like to add?
The relationship also evolves, isn't it? I mean, it's not as if that over a period of time, a relationship is static, that even within a family or within an organization, evolves, or as an individual evolves, the relationship also evolves. So it really, and the control of this evolution lies in with the organization, nor does it lie entirely with the individual. So for example, I might say that I might wish to become a very obedient employee in an organization, but whether or not I will be able to fulfill my wish partly depends on my intent and actions. Partly it also depends on the organization culture.
Absolutely. I think that's a very important point you have made, Rup, that these are both are dynamic entities. Individual is dynamic and the organization is also dynamic. And many of you who work as coaches would have also, and all of the time, would be encountering this, that you are working with the person, and when we are working with that person, the person would also be sharing with you all the forces and all the pressures that the person is experiencing from the system. The person would also be talking about the changes and shifts which the person experiences in himself or herself. The person would also be talking about the changes and shifts which have happened in the context. I'm sure as coaches you would have come across people talking about either the good old days of how things were and how they are, now having to adapt to a different and new reality. So these are both are dynamic entities and both are, thanks for pointing that out. So before we move on further, we'd like you to do a small exercise. We'd like you to take a couple of minutes and write down on a piece of paper 5 adjectives which you believe describe yourself. Take a couple of minutes, just write 5 adjectives which come to your mind. It doesn't have to be exhaustive. I know none of us can be captured by just 5 adjectives, but just for the sake of the exercise, just write down 5 adjectives for yourself. Okay, now do the other thing. Write 5 adjectives about any of the systems that you are part of, be it your family, your work organization, your any other body that you can think of, any professional body that you are a part of. Write 5 adjectives about any system that you are a part of. Okay, I hope everyone has done that. Now, as you look at these 2 lists that you have made about adjectives about yourself and adjectives about the system that you're a part of, chances are that you will find that there will be some adjectives which resonate very well with each other, which are, which are sitting in very well. For instance, you may have said that I'm a peace loving person. And you may have also said that my system is a very harmonious place. Or you may have said that I am a very disciplined person. And you may have said that, look, my system is a very well defined, orderly, organized place. So there'll be some set, set of adjectives which will have a strong resonance with each other. Similarly, you will discover some adjectives which may have a dissonance with each other. Like, for instance, if you have said that I'm a very disciplined person, and you have said simultaneously that the system that I belong to is a very chaotic system, it's a very disorderly system, it's a system where everyone is doing anything that the person feels like, then there's a tension here, there is a dissonance here. I hope this difference is clear between elements which are resonating between the self and the system, and elements which are which are, you know, in a sense creating tension between the self and the system. The reason why we are asking you to do this is, and of course, this is something that you perhaps may like to work with for yourself, is to ask yourself, what am I doing with the resonances and the dissonances both? Many times we feel resonance is a good thing, which it is. But resonance also has its problems. While resonance, makes us feel comfortable and feel very nice, it also has the difficulty of making us become complacent. It pushes both the individual and the system into a kind of comfort zone. And there is a stagnation. If there was only resonance, there'll be stagnation. Similarly, dissonance may be a source of tension, but dissonance also has a creative potential in it. It is only when you experience some dissonance that you want to find new ways of doing things. You want to impact the system, or it's an opportunity for you to learn and grow. So growth and learning happens through dissonance a lot more than resonance. Resonance has the risk of pushing you into a zone of comfort. Dissonance can create tension, but it also is an opportunity for a creative, uh, providing new openings. It has a huge creative potential. Now, in order to map, now here we have just asked you to do this by yourself through this to give you a feel of what we are talking about. But in order to map this, one needs to have a certain framework. Hume is a framework which helps you to map the resonance and dissonance that you have between yourself and the system to which you belong. Because there are plenty of frameworks that look at the individual. There are plenty of frameworks which look at the organization. Hume is perhaps, to best of my knowledge, the only framework which looks at both the individual and the organization. So it tries to relate the two. So it uses the same imperative, because the basic assumption in Hume is that it is the same set of imperatives which underlie both the individual and the system. In our framework, we look at organizations as living entities. And we say that as living organisms, they are governed by same imperatives as individual human beings are. So if we can, you know, look at both of them in terms of some of the essential existential imperatives of being, whether it be at the human level or at a collective level, one will be able to see in terms of how the individual is engaging with these imperatives. So we'll give you a little bit of an idea. Roop, would you like to take over and take them through the
Sure.
imperatives and the how they manifest in different?
Right. So I'm hoping can everybody see the screen? Yeah.
Yes.
Aishwarya, is that
Yes.
visible? Great.
Yes.
So if I look at there are 5 basic elements of Hume, which then lead to 5 imperatives, both at the human level and at the organizational correspondence. Yeah. So if I take it, for example, the first one. Now, all human beings have an inherent need for safety, an inherent need for belonging and protection, right? So, for example, one would say that one would have a thing in terms of that where do I belong? You know, do I belong to my family? Do I belong to my organization? Do I belong to a certain community? Is there a certain country that I belong to, etc., etc.? It's an inherent question that we always struggle at all points of time. We ask ourselves, and we are always in search for our roots, right? A sense where a place of what we often call home, right? Now, at an individual level, for example, we look for tradition, heritage, norms. You know, very often in our families, we keep saying that in our families, this is the way we do things, right? And we say it with a certain degree of pride often, right? We say that, we are all one, okay? This is our collective identity. So even in a global world, when people migrate, they still would like to find out, so many expats we find who say that, no, but I am Indian at heart, right? And this is coming from that space. Correspondingly, in an organizational level, right, you have an organization also looks for safety, belongingness, protection, tradition. It will value harmony. It will seek ambience, you know, where people can just be. Very often people say that I love my organization because we are like one family, right? I can trust people over here, or at least we have a collective wish to be a part of organizations where we feel safe. In organizations, for example, one of the key factors that will come in is if I belong to that organization, who is in and who is not in, right? There will be a very clear demarcator, right? And this is a universe psychologically, both at an individual level and at a systemic level, which fosters trust. That what is it that I can, you know, that is what gives us safety, because I can be here, I can trust myself in this system completely, and therefore I can let my guard down and I can put my hair down. This is the imperative of this first element that we talk about, that is a safe haven. At an organization level, it's called the clan. Yeah. Ashok, anything I've missed out on?
No, carry on.
Okay. The second one is about asserting individuality. Now, as people, as we grow up, from the time maybe we are children, we say that, okay, for the first 10 years of our lives, we are pretty much belong to our parents. But once we become adolescents, we start questioning about, so who am I? How am I different from my family? How am I different from my peers? What do I wish to become? How am I? And the whole notion of individuality, right? It is a human imperative. Each one of us would have come up with these questions in our growing up years and well into our adulthood. It is probably a lifelong question that we even seek in professional spaces. How am I different from the rest? So while I might be a part of a larger organization where we are all same, we are all similar in many ways, but there will be also another question, is that how am I different from everybody else? What are my special and unique qualities? What are my strengths? Yeah.
What are my
Correspondingly,
needs?
what are
What
my
are my
needs?
needs?
What are my needs? Yeah.
What are my desires?
What are my desires? Uh, and correspondingly, at an organizational level, we will have something, it's called the arena. So it's a universe of strength and desire for the individual. And for the organizational level, it is that part of the organizational psyche which again looks for significance, which asks oneself that in the market amongst all the other competitors, how am I different? What is it that I'm bringing in? What are my strengths as opposed to the others? What is my wish and my desire? Where do I wish to go? Right? And even intra-organization, there will be a certain culture which will look at how do I value individual strength, initiative, right? Ambitions, right? And all systems will have a certain element of that, saying that how do I look at this space of arena, right? And there might be sometimes in various cultures, one might say that, oh, this is not a nice thing to be, so we should not be that. But it doesn't take away the fact that it is there. And it might be a voice within that asks these questions, and we might often turn around and say, oh, you should not think like that, but doesn't mean that it is not there. It is an imperative that is, if you're a system, if there is a system will experience all of this, because this is a universe from where we see independence, we see dynamism, we see risk taking, we see pride and self-belief and conviction. I have the potency, I have the strength to achieve, I can conquer it. So even if the rest of the world may not believe in it, I completely believe, and I will fight till the end. That's a spirit that comes in, without which an organization or any system will never be able to survive.
And so provided it will also create conflict.
It will create conflict.
It will create conflict. It will create competitiveness. Roop, there is a comment from someone that they can't see the slides.
Oops.
They can't see the full slides. They're saying they are cut off. I think you need to put it on some other...
Is it like this?
I think now it is. If you can expand this, can it go into a...
If I'm expanding it, then it becomes then it goes like this.
Okay. I think this
I think
is
it's better at 125.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, okay. Yes, carry on, Roop.
So yeah, like Ashok was saying over here, for example, power dynamics, yeah, inclusion, exclusion, that, and this is what gives rise to competitiveness. It is also gives rise to creativity. So yeah, so this is a universe of winners and losers. So either you will win or you will lose. And assertion and aggression, like Ashok was saying that, conflict it's a part of this universe, right? Shall we go to the next one? The third element of the Hume is about clarity of expectations and orderly interface. Now, this is something that we all need at a daily level. For example, what is it that in any system, in a family, or in an organization, what is my role? What am I expected to do? Or what is it that I would like to do as well, but you know, how do I relate with somebody else in the family or in the organization? What is their role? What do they bring in? Yeah. How do I organize a collective, a group of people, whether in a family or a system or an organization? How do we all work with each other? Yeah. And this is therefore we require boundaries. We require clarity of expectations. We require systems of communication. Yeah. So because it is also creating predictability and orderliness of one kind, right? That I know that, okay, if I do this, if I say this, Ashok will say that. Or this is, if I have a question, who do I go to? I can go to Ashok. I can expect Ashok to give me an answer, right? So that kind of predictability and orderliness, it values objectivity and is blind to subjective sense making. So it will have great, in organizations, very often we hear that, Naini, if you say that you feel like this, that may be your truth, but what is the objective reality? What is it that one truth which is actually the fact or truth? And this is where it comes from this universe. Boundaries are very tightly defined. What you will do and what I will do will be very clearly defined and divided, sometimes even to the point of becoming in silos, right? So very often when we talk about in bureaucracy, one person doesn't know what the other person is doing. And one person says, this is my work with the file, the balance you have to go to the other person, I know nothing about it. So that's an extreme situation. Similarly, hierarchy is very important element in this universe. Who you are, what you will do, what your powers are, what you will decide, what you will not decide, who you will listen to, who you will obey, who you will give guidance to, will all depend on where you stand in that system vis-a-vis your hierarchy. And any role taking, therefore, has to be justified through that hierarchy and your position that the system ascribes to you, right? So if the previous universe is about self-authorization, this is a universe where the system tells you what you must do. Similarly, at an organizational level as well. For example, organizations will have to abide by compliance because that is what the governments might have dictated. So over here, it's not about whether the organization wants to comply or doesn't want to comply, right? So from this universe, when an organization speaks, it will look at rules, norms, compliance, procedures, etc., etc. Any changes that we're talking about from this universe will only be incremental because big leaps of faith and risk-taking does not belong to this universe. So if you're in this level, so the next logical step is the next level, right? So it's a ladder movement in a sense. And over here, inclusion, exclusion is all decided by rules and regulations. So who will be called for which meeting, whose opinion will be taken for what decision, will also be decided by your rules and regulations of that system. Yes, Ashok?
Someone wanted to see the clan slide again.
Okay. There we are. Is there a question attached to it?
No, they just wanted to see the slide because they couldn't see it earlier.
Right. Shall I move on? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next element that we're talking about is what we call going beyond current expectations. So one goes through life in saying pretty much, and many of you, I'm guessing, would be in your 30s or 40s. You might have studied and started on a career and got a job and whatever. And sometimes once in a while you say that, but after doing all of this, what is it that we are looking at to achieve? What are we, what are we willing, what are we going to be our sort of a legacy or a hallmark, or what is it that we want to collectively achieve? And it may not be completely in my power, but how can we as an organization or team or the ecosystem or others, can we all move towards building that collective achievement and a goal? So this is a universe of purpose and achievement and the network. So at an organizational level, at an individual level, a person will ask, what is my goal in life? What is it that I wish to achieve that will make me feel satisfied? And what are my competencies? There is a certain recognition about one's limitations as well. That what is it that I can do? What is it that I cannot do? And therefore, should I work with? Who should I ally with? Who can bring in that complementarity? So unlike in the second universe, the universe of strength and desire, where the one feels omnipotent, that I can do it all, as far as this universe is concerned, a person is cognizant of one's strength, but also cognizant of one's limitations. This is a universe which looks for collaboration. Therefore, we collaborate with others, and the basis of that collaboration is mutual benefit. That you win and I win, and you and I work together to achieve something collectively or jointly in partnership. Over here, methods and protocols are used as enabling platforms. So unlike in the previous universe, where methods and protocols are important for its own sake, that if you're a system, if you're a person, you must have a routine. Why must you have a routine? No, because routines are important. That's the implicit belief. Over here, the ask is that if I wish to achieve this, so what is the method and protocol I must follow in order to be able to achieve this, right? There is a task is what defines power, authority, and information requirements. So it's like a typical, if you and I, Ashok and I are working together with Aishwarya, so we would have quickly decided, Acha, how much does Aishwarya need to know, right? What is it that I must be in control of? For example, over here, showing the slides was my responsibility, right? And doing a good job of it was my thing. So task over here will therefore decide power and authority and information requirements. So what is it that Aishwarya will need to know, therefore, to be able to perform her role in here, and so on and so forth. In this universe, because this meritocracy is so important, the inclusion and exclusion is that if you are competent, if you know your craft, if you are an excellent person, then you will definitely have a role to play. Because in my seeking achievement, you are worth your competencies, your values, your knowledge, your skills, right? And therefore, people are essentially seen as for their competencies and their expertise. Ashok?
Yeah, I think that's carry on.
Okay. The fifth element is, this is also about going beyond me and mine, because in the previous universe, it was still about me and ours, right? And it was tangible. But over here, we seem to have, there is a certain element in a human imperative where a human being will, from time to time, ask that I have achieved so much, I have tried so hard, I have succeeded in life. But what is it that all of this means? Yeah. And very often some of these existential questions we ask, either in moments of crisis or in moments of satiation, that I've done all, but there is something I still must answer to myself, that what is it all of this in service to? Yeah. At an individual level, for example, we will ask questions like, what do relationships mean? What is the nature of intimacy that I experience with people who are near to me, in my family, in the organization? So any questions that might come, for example, in a UPA, in the previous universe, somebody might say, you are a part of an organization because you've simply come to work. You've come to work, you've come to achieve, you've brought in your skills, competencies. That's what professionalism was about. However, this is one part of one of the imperatives, is that we all seek something more, and when we are relating to each other as friends, as family, as colleagues, we are not looking at each other only as service providers. We are human beings, and it will evoke in us as individuals Similarly, is organizations. An organization will also say that in doing all that we are doing, what are we really doing? You know, who does our company make sense to? What meaning do we value in? What meaning and value do we add to this ecosystem? Over here, values and principles are of great importance. And you might come across several organizations who will say, making steel is not our core business. Our core business is to look at, improvement of human lives.
We also make steel.
Or we also make steel, yeah. And and somebody who's there only to earn money and make profit might say, yeah, you know, what kind of foolish romanticism is this? Right? So that's what the outsider, especially from the previous universe, will say. Are we are all here to achieve. We are all here to succeed. What is this whole business of? But this is a universe which looks at meaningfulness in one's role, in one's journey, even in terms of one's ambition. So at an organizational level, it will talk about we, but this we is very different from the we that one talked in clan. Over here, for example, organizations will be able to recognize that each individual is unique, right? In the clan, all of us are same, right? Over here, there is a certain, it can be a certain get away with a certain romanticism, saying that actually no conflict is real conflict, you know, that we are all human beings. We've all come into this life, or the organization has come into its life. We're all going to go. What are we going to take away with us? So competitiveness, pettiness, etc., is, you know, those are baser things, right? So some people might say that, oh, this is all very romantic idealism. This is, you know, this is not what happens in real life. So this universe is sometimes vulnerable of being accused of not being real enough. Yeah, Ashok?
If you see, like in all the 5 universes, there is a sequence. So UBP is essentially about where do I belong? Where are my roots? Where is my belonging? UBP and clan. USD and arena is about, all right, who am I? I'm also somebody. It's just belonging is not enough for human beings. You also want to be somebody that, look, I have my needs, I have my desires, I have my wishes, I want to, get ahead or whatever. I need to dominate. There is in this world the survival of the fittest, all that kind of thing. Then there is a thing in terms of, okay, I'm there, others are there. We need to have an orderly interface, a certain predictability, a certain set of expectations. I know what I can expect, and I know what is expected of me. So I need a certain clarity, which is what the 3rd universe does. The 4th universe, in a sense, tells me to go beyond my current limitations and situations and say more is possible. I can do more, I can achieve more. And in order to do that, I need to collaborate with others. So unless I collaborate with others, I will not be able to go beyond a certain point. So in order to achieve, I need to collaborate and create a network. The 5th universe says, all right, I have achieved, I have succeeded, but what value have I added? What is the quality of life that I'm leading? What does it mean in larger human terms? And this is what we call the universe of meaningfulness and intimacy, or ecology. So each of these universes is important. Each of these universes fulfills a particular, what we call, a certain human imperative. Right? Can we go on, Roop?
Yeah. Sorry, Ashok. One second.
I think there is some comment somewhere.
Aishwarya, any comments?
Yes, in fact, there is a question also.
Okay.
Prasad has asked, how is EUM different from a person organization fit questionnaire that looks at fit along multiple dimensions?
All right. Firstly, it Hume is there are two separate elements to Hume. One is called Hume individual, and the other is called Hume organization. So Hume individual focuses on understanding the individual and seeing how the individual is seeing his or her context. Hume organization looks at the organization and says, okay, where is this organization? What is this organization's identity? And it's used for diagnostic purposes. Hume I and Hume O together can be looked at to understand what is the likely interplay between the individual and the organization. In Hume, we don't talk of fitment, we talk of interplay. We say, what is the nature of interplay that is likely to be generated? Like if this individual in these ways will be distinct from the organization, this is the distinct contribution this person can make or will not be able to make. These are the likely difficulties this person will, will face. So you're not looking at fitment in Hume. You're looking at interface, and we are looking at, because you basic assumption is that even if there is a dissonance between the individual and the organization, or there is lack of fitment, that lack of fitment has a creative opportunity. See, alignment in mechanical systems, the tighter the alignment, the better. If the mechanical system and if the two elements fit in very well, the system will be very efficient. In organic systems, the alignment has to be a little loose. So therefore, you are not looking at fitment. You are looking at interplay between the two.
Okay, so
Okay.
now the task is that you go, all of you can refer back to the adjectives that you had given to yourself and to your organizations, right? And if any of you would like to work with some of that, just put up your hand. I mean, you have the Q&A that will show, and we'll invite you in, and we can actually work with some of the data that you might have.
Or any insight or question that you may have
Correct.
from whatever we have. So what we're inviting you to do is to look at the objectives that you had put out and figure out for yourself as to which particular imperatives were at play here, at the individual, for yourself, and in the organization as you see them. So you may well find that some imperatives are very strong in you, but they are not very strong in the organization. Or some imperatives are very, like the example which I gave of a person who's very self-disciplined. Now, for that person, the imperative of URB is very strong. But if the organization is not very strong on clockwork, the person will experience the organization as a madhouse. The person will say, oh, it's too chaotic a place. Whereas if the organization is also high on clockwork, then the person will feel, oh yeah, I'm very disciplined. So what is the nature of interplay which may be taking place? So use your own data or anything else that you may like to share. Your hand and
I think Ashok's internet just dropped a little.
Yeah.
what happened?
Okay, I think.
We can hear you. Your screen is now you're back.
Oh, my screen was back.
No,
There's a
no.
problem
You had
with...
just we had just missed you for a sec.
Okay,
It's okay.
Okay.
So Marina has raised a hand, and
Great.
yeah.
Should we sort of invite her in?
Yes. Hi, Marina. You're on mute. Marina, you there?
Okay, sorry, now I've unmuted. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Yes, Marina.
I'm calling you from London, and I just logged on when I saw Anil Grover's invitation. So what a rich conversation. I work in the area of leadership for good. So this is great. Now, my question is this, is one amongst my five adjectives was freedom, fun, expression, contribution. Yeah. And in my corporate career, I experienced that to some respect in organizations who were strategic and high performing. But there came a point when I had been in the organization for, let's say, more than 18 months, where this wanting to express and make a contribution didn't align with most of those organizations, which purpose was really performance as opposed to like, and we make steel, you know? So this is wonderful. And then for the last few years, I've been searching about collaborating or being part of a community that was a solution to business leaders as opposed to part of the problem they may cause. And again, I found lots of small pockets of groups, but there wasn't complete alignment either. And also because I felt that something was missing. And now hearing you, I'm feeling, I understand what was missing, because there was definitely intention, purpose, and there was collaboration, and there was freedom of expression, but there wasn't fun and there wasn't family. It was even internally quite competitive, you know? And I'm realizing this until I find it quite different with Atmatva, which is Anil Grover's creative collaborative group. Okay, so that's my insight, my aha so far. I don't know if there's a question in there, but maybe I'd like to explore it further, because sometimes what I find is I want to be part of a community, but I want the freedom to play and express myself. And there's a pull and a push.
I think what you've offered, Marina, is very, very valuable. And I think the insight that you have offered. And this is a very significant issue, because if I may take my hunch is that the organization that you're talking about is primarily governed by the imperatives of clockwork and network, right? With some elements of arena. Whereas the location that you are coming from is seeking a lot more UMI and ecology. And the organization would, you would experience a certain dissatisfaction there. The organization would suck you in its clockwork network, orientation, and say, yeah, this is the way it is. And you would, it will not provide you the space to be creative, to express, and to go beyond. So your thing in terms of arena and ecology, you may have a difficulty there. So that's the kind of tension, which often you're not the only person. Many people experience that, particularly people who have a strong need for creativity start feeling a little stifled in a setup which may be good in terms of achievement, performance, etc., but is also start experiencing it as a little dry. So I think it's a very useful insight that you have provided.
Yes, thank you. And you know what I'm realizing when I hear you speak, Ashok, is that if the organization was good and I made it better, they loved it. But for me, better is a journey. It's not a destination. And then they kind of generally, they settled at the better because it was better than before, rather than saying, okay, best or better for what? Better for us, better for society. And I think that's where we became undone, where I was a gift to them at one point, maybe I was a misfit afterwards, and where for me, in the beginning, it was an opportunity. Afterwards, it was a cage.
Yeah, absolutely. You would kind of feel that, that it is. And what ends up happening with the high clockwork network organizations is that their idea of better is frozen. that this is what is better, more of what is happening now. So more of the present, the definition of better is not something which is different from what is happening now. It is a little improvement on, so that basic paradigm doesn't shift, and that becomes very stifling. I
Yes,
think there is
thank you.
another very interesting thing which has come from Milind.
Anuradha. Ashok,
I
Anuradha
thought,
has also asked.
okay, what is that? Yeah, sorry.
Before Milind, Anuradha has asked, do you feel all systems in self should be in sync?
All systems in self should be in sync.
Self should be in sync. In other words, is a Hume advocating that self and systems should always be at sync?
Well, I think it will be a very sad day if all individuals are all the time in sync with the system. It will only perpetuate itself, and uniformity, it will only breed uniformity and a certain kind of homogeneity. I think some amount of tension, some amount of things going out of sync is an invitation to evolution. Evolution cannot happen if everything is in sync. It becomes static. If you are saying sync in the sense of being in rhythm with each other, that there is a certain, that it creates music, then I would agree, yes, there has to be a certain thing in terms of being in sync, in the sense of different things creating a certain music, but not in the sense of, being total fitment, total alignment, etc. That kind of sync is at least not my cup of tea. In Hume, the basic assumption is that absence of a certain alignment and presence of tension is an invitation to growth and evolution. That's one of our basic starting points.
I think she's then added, or is it does it need to get aligned sequentially? But I think you've pretty much.
Yeah, but all alignments need to continuously
Milind has asked a
revisit
question.
itself. Yeah.
Ashok, say that a little more.
Yeah.
Can you just repeat that last bit that you were talking about?
Yeah, I think it said, yes, I meant sync in being in rhythm with each other. Absolutely. In rhythm with each other, I'll agree with you. But again, some things have to go a little bit away. A certain tension is necessary. Without a certain tension, no growth and evolution takes place. So it is, it's like alignment is not an end. So when you say to get aligned sequentially, I think that's true. That there is a certain level of alignment, and that there is a higher level of alignment, and there is a higher level of alignment. But simultaneously, it has to be accompanied with lack of alignment also. Otherwise, the individual will get totally swamped by the system. The system will, make everyone into a robot.
Okay, Milind's question. Two of my self adjectives, curious and courageous. Two of my systems adjectives, goal-oriented and focus. Can we work with this? Milind, would you like to come in? Shwarya, could we ask Milind to join?
Yes, if he wants to come up to the panel, I can promote him.
Milind? He says, sure.
Okay. Milind,
okay.
Hi, Milind.
Can we, we can, is he there?
Yeah.
Hey, hi Ashok, hi Roop. Nice to see you again.
Yeah. Hi there. Good to see you, Milind.
Same, yeah. Lovely to be here.
Milind, you can figure this out for yourself quite clearly, no?
I do, but It's good to hear again. I mean, it's like, more and more you listen to the music, you enjoy it more and more. There are further nuances. So would love to hear from you and Roop both.
See quite clearly your adjectives about yourself, which are one was curious, the other was
Courageous.
courageous. Like have a strong USD flavor to them. Whereas your adjectives about the system have a strong clockwork network flavor to them. So if
Okay.
I translate it in terms of, therefore, in a system, you would either end up becoming a maverick, right? Or you would be given the tasks which no one else wants to do. You would become a crisis manager. That okay, this is the thing which has come up, or you would become a resource, invest in someone who's kind of looking at new kinds of excitements. The system would perhaps look at you, right, as someone who will create new excitements, new opportunities. The system may also find you a little difficult to live with. System may worry कि इसको control कैसे करें. This man can go all over the place. So these would be the implications. So I'm not talking in terms of desirable, undesirable, but I'm saying in terms of what is the kind of phenomena which is likely to get triggered with this kind of an interface. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I can give back some factual data that there have
Yeah.
been systems which, as you rightly says, couldn't figure out how to deal with me.
Yeah.
And they have successfully ejected me out.
All right.
And before ejecting, the very same systems gave me tasks which nobody wanted to do.
Absolutely.
And
That's
expected
right,
me to do the cleanup, which of course I did. And having done that, they said, thank you very much for doing a good job. Yeah, wonderful, Ashok. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Catch up
All
with you
right.
sometime.
Yeah, please.
Bye, Roop.
Bye, Milind.
Catch up
Okay,
with you.
Roop, we are already at 1:32. Can we spend some
32,
10,
yeah.
if these are there, can we spend some 10-15 minutes at looking at the larger macro context?
Sure. Ashok, much of the Hume discussions has deliberated today looking at individuals and systems over here being families and organizations.
Yeah.
But if one looks at the larger context, so for example, in the last few decades, we have seen with globalization of economies, we have seen migration of labor having increased, migration of people, global migrations have increased manifold, right? And suddenly going abroad and working abroad, which used to be quite quite a rare thing in the if about 50 or 60 years ago, suddenly has caught on that everybody is away from their home and they are working in some other city, some other country, etc. Now this migration has also created certain social tensions and conflicts in terms of that one says that therefore, is a country belong to a race of people who have been always identified with it, or does it belong to outsiders? So there's been a tension between insiders and outsiders. There's a tension about whether Europe is white or Europe is multicultural, and so even even when we look at in India, it's the same thing, right? I mean, who does Bombay belong to? Does it belong to the people who work in it and live in it, or does it belong to the Mumbaikars or the Marathi people, etc.? And this kind of a tension has often also given rise to a certain politics. So in the last 10 or 20 years, we have seen a growth of a certain kind of politics and a certain voice which says son of the soil, that you are the original inhabitant, you are the people who this land belongs to, etc., etc. And outsiders cannot take away from you what rightfully belongs to yours. So the identity over here will be by race, by culture, by nationality. And so we hear a lot of nationalism-driven politics around. On the other hand, we also hear a voice which is the liberal voice, which says, actually, there is no difference. Human beings are all the same. We are all global citizens. We are no different by our, the skin color of our skin should not be a marker of differentness. Actually, then nothing is probably different. We are all one undifferentiated human identity, etc. And this school of thought looks at the former, saying, no, that is very parochial, that is very narrow identity based. It's a very narrow way of looking at oneself. It creates conflict, etc., etc. So we are hearing this all around, day in and day out, in India and in the rest of the world. How does Hume look at something like this as a phenomenon?
All right, I'll respond to that. There are also a couple of other questions which have come up. I'm just putting them on the hold, and maybe
Sure.
after we have finished this discussion. So I think Anuradha has raised some questions. Someone else has also raised. Vinita has raised. I think.
Yes, Ashok, Anuradha and Vinita have 2 questions. We can take it after your
Okay,
discussion.
after we finish this, we'll come back to, because, essentially, in many ways, Roop, what you have described is a conflict between what one may broadly call the clan orientation and a network ecological orientation. Now, what has happened in the world that we are living in is the world that the way it is structured, it assumes a network orientation for everyone. If everyone was being governed by enlightened self-interest and everyone was sufficiently ecological to not get threatened by new people coming, etc., if everyone was in that kind of thing, perhaps you will not see this. So the entire system that we have developed is one which is strongly rooted in network, which pays a little bit of, takes, recognizes the necessity of clockwork, is acceptable of arena, pays lip service to ecology, and is disdainful of clan. Even in organizations, I find, there is so much of disdain towards anything to do with clan and UBP. Can you see that the amount which gets written about transformative leadership? Does anyone ever talk about preservative leadership? Does anyone ever talk about how to, make things harmonious? It's almost as though clan and UBP must be, done away with. Now, if you have a disdain for it, they're not going to just disappear like that. They will show up. And they are showing up all over the world. Even economies which are so well off, they are feeling threatened by migrants. They feel that, their rightful thing is being taken away from them. So just by, and that's one of the significant things about you, that just by neglecting an imperative, that imperative does not go away. I think one of the mistakes which liberals end up making is that they are very disdainful towards UBP and clan. And the more disdainful they are, the greater the difficulty, the more you will see the backlash. So in Hume, when we work, you are all the time looking at not merely those imperatives which are being acknowledged and embraced, but also the imperatives which are being suppressed. And those imperatives which are being suppressed, then they will show up in many ways, which is what we think is happening at the larger level. But I think even at the organization level, this is happening. At one level, almost all organizations today swear by the ideology of network. Meritocracy is a big word. The entire thing is we don't care where you come from, we don't care who you are, we only care about what are the skills and competencies that you bring to the table. But does it mean personal affiliations go away? People still have cliques. Does it mean everyone is feeling secure? No. You're all the time trying to cover up yourself. You're all the time trying to find various insidious ways of feeling safe. Feeling safe is such an important human imperative. You cannot ignore it. Unfortunately, both at the macro level and at organizational level, this imperative continuously gets pushed aside, and continuously we are having to face its the backside, the downside of its neglect. I think let's see if we can take this forward in some way, but can we go back to the questions which have been raised? And maybe some of this may come up again from there.
Yeah, we hear Vinita saying that system would be different from for different individuals, and the individual can keep changing based on the response. How do we align for stability in such case, given a long-term impact?
Plenty of responses, Vinita, to what you have said. Firstly, there are we talk of two different things. One is system in the mind of the individual and system as it actually exists. They are not always the same. The individual's behavior is determined not by the actual reality of the system. The individual's behavior is determined by how the individual is held, how the system is held in the mind of the individual. If the individual sees the system as high on arena, that's what it matters. Whether it actually is there or not, and you are very right, that different people would see it differently. So when we look at organizational diagnosis, then we don't go by only by what one person is saying. We look at normally at least 10 to 12 people, and when you have about 10 to 12 people, you tend to get fairly stable results. That's when you say this is what the system's reality is. But here the focus primarily in terms of individual's role, individual's engagement is determined by the system as it exists in the mind of the individual. As far as the issue of stability is concerned, I think what we need to pay a lot more attention is how to enable people to live within stability, not to how to find stability. I think that's going to be an exercise in futility. What is more important, unfortunately, and this is a paradox, that as human life has become more and more and more what shall I say, settled. Today, for instance, if we compare our lives to lives of our ancestors 10,000 years back, there is so much more stability we have. They didn't even know where their next meal is going to come from. They didn't know, they didn't have homes to have any shelter. They were all at the vagaries of nature and all kinds of other things. We don't have to deal with any of that instability. But unfortunately, as things have, as we have mastered gain mastery over nature and other uh, material conditions of living, our ability to live with uncertainty has gone down tremendously. Even if I see it in my own lifetime, uh, 30, 40 years back, right? There was no STD. There was, of course, no internet, no this thing. Even on telephones, if you had to talk to someone, you made a trunk call, and then you made that trunk call through an operator, and then the operator would say, "Okay, I will." It was a project. Talking to someone outside your city was a major project, right? Today, if I'm engaging with someone who's in another country, absolutely, I just put on my TV and I expect that that would be there. And if it is not there, I feel hassled. I could live with all that uncertainty 40 years back. So as we have gained more and more, as technology has advanced, as we have gained more control, unfortunately, our ability to live with instability has gone down. And that's why people keep screaming about VUCA, VUCA all the time. The problem is not VUCA. The problem is that we don't know how to live with uncertainty. So the important thing, Vinita, is not so much in terms of finding stability, but the important thing is to creating conditions and helping people to live with uncertainty, to live with instability, to live with certain things which are going to change.
Ashok, Rajiv Narona asks, what would be some of the visible manifestation of organizations who didn't wish away the clan?
Who didn't wish away the clan. There are some organizations who get entrenched in clan. Right. So there is also the other side, you see. You see organizations who are deeply entrenched in clan. They become very closed. They refuse to see new opportunities. They refuse to engage with anything new. They refuse to include outsiders. Anyone outside of their own kind is very difficult for them to take in. So if you get sucked into a clan, you have one set of problems. But if you run away from clan, you have another set of problems. It's only organizations which have a reasonable acceptance of clan without getting sucked into it, where you accept. So such organizations would pay attention to people's feelings. They would pay attention to relationships. They would say, yeah, this is also important. They will not make people feel that you are only valued for your contribution. They would also make people feel that you are valued as a person. You are valued for who you are. They would not look at only in terms of how much direct benefit you are creating. If I look at uh, a typical joint family syndrome, in a joint family does not differentiate in terms of entitlement between people who contribute more and people who contribute less. So let's say there are two brothers. One is bringing in a lot of money, the other is not. But their children will still receive the same kind of education. There'll be some differences, but it is not. They don't work on the basis of only that which is visible, direct, contributed is what is more important. If you have a healthy respect for clan, you will accept people's vulnerabilities.
Okay, I think Roop's internet just dropped. I'll take up the next question for you.
Yeah.
So Anuradha asks, what happens when there is too much of dissonance and one cannot deal with it and system cannot handle it or is unable to change? Will the existing system be an advisable option here?
I don't know what is too much of dissonance, but yes, beyond a point, it will become then it will become unworkable. Because I mean, when I say that dissonance has creative potential, but dissonance also can lead you to, the tension can break things. So there has to be, it can only be an optimum amount of tension that it can take. But sometimes what also ends up happening is that the dissonance ends up appearing larger than what it actually is. Because if one gets entrenched into a position, if one gets too caught, like let's say a person who has scant respect for rules and regulations and finds that the organization is very high on clockwork, may experience the dissonance as too much. This is a very stifling place, I can't survive here, and all kinds of things. But it is possible if the individual asks of himself, right, that is a certain amount of clockwork necessary? Is there some flexibility which is available which I'm not, exploring? So many times dissonance may seem larger than what it actually is. And that happens because we get entrenched into our own particular stances.
Okay. Raghu has shared a comment. Pretends to be above the rest while being blind to one's own competitiveness, parochialism, and so on. They are the new exclusive group.
Say that again, that sounds very interesting.
Pretends to be above the rest while being blind to one's own competitiveness and parochialism, and so on.
Absolutely.
They are the new exclusive group.
That's right, yes. This is the shadow of clan and arena, which, it is masquerades in the name of network and ecology. That's the new elite. You masquerade in the name of network and ecology, but actually what is at play here is really clan and arena. Because your own insecurities, your own anxieties are at work here.
Okay, Marina has another question. I am conscious that I'm more sensitive as I get older and more vulnerable. So I consciously do not allow negativity in. Why would that be?
That's a very interesting question. It's a very interesting question because I don't know what is actually being said here. Because there are a whole lot of possibilities here. One possibility is that many things which may have seemed as, what shall I say, that one's own angularities that one may have not embraced earlier, one begins to embrace them. One in some ways begins to accept oneself in one's totality. So in many ways, it may actually be that it's a sign of greater self-acceptance. It is also possible a certain sign of rigidity which builds in, right? A certain thing which, it has a difficulty with, like I see for myself, if I say for myself, that with age, I see my levels of patience are, dropping. I'm not as patient as I used to be, maybe some years back. Now, part of it arises, I think, from just the mere process of aging. Part of it also arises from greater self-acceptance, that I give myself a little more freedom to be myself the way I am, which may seem as being hypersensitive to others. I don't know, Marina, does that answer your question?
She says yes, self-acceptance.
Roop, where are you? You have been very quiet.
Well, I think his
has he
internet
got?
disturbed.
I think he's having some problems with his connection.
Yes, yes. I think I'm just adding him.
All right.
Sorry about that.
What happened? You got logged off.
The internet, we're talking about predictability and unpredictability.
All right. We have just about 5 minutes. So can we have some closing comments, observations, insights, anything that anyone would like to share before we close?
Raghu had a statement, in the Q&A.
Yeah.
We did discuss that.
Okay.
I did share it with.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, everybody can continue to share. What would be your closing thoughts that to our audience, to everybody watching this? If there is one way that they can, one line that they take away from this session.
You're asking Roop and me?
Yes, yes.
I'm very bad at these one-liners. Roop, it's all yours.
I can talk about my experience of working with a Hume. I think it essentially has very deeply impacted or helped me question some of the values and judgments that I held in terms of what human beings ought to be, or what organizations ought to be or ought not to be. Yeah. So it sort of turns around the entire desirability of who a person should be, the whole idea of transcendence and perfection and, etc., etc. Rather than that, to look at the human psyche and the organizational psyche as an integrated space where the real fun lies in the dynamics and exploring the dynamics. So I see in the market force, there's a constant pull towards looking at instruments which promises people improvement and perfection, which I think is an essentially network statement. That even the purpose of engagement of an individual, a psychometric instrument, either for individuals or organizations, seems to be betterment, improvement. For me, Hume is a framework, a lens that makes people and organizations come alive and recognize themselves and the systems in wholesomeness. That's a whole new sort of a level of relatedness then gets created between individuals and systems.
That is great. That does summarize it very well. Ashok, we would like to hear from you also. Not necessarily one line, but then of course, concluding 2 to 3 lines.
Okay, 2 to 3 lines. She's limited, huh? Very clear. 4, please.
Sure.
You see, if one looks at the human situation, human beings have made tremendous progress in the techno-economic sphere. Technologically, economically, we have made huge progress. Unfortunately, the emotional, psychologically maturity has not kept pace with it. And in this process, a lot of alienation, both from oneself as also from, emotional infrastructure that one needs with one's community, family, other things. So this gap, I believe, is a fairly serious issue, not just for individuals and organizations, but for humanity at large. It's a serious issue. We need to address this issue. We need to focus on. And to do that would be, so in the process, what has happened with the techno-economic progress, human beings have got instrumentalized. So we now only look at human beings in instrumental terms, in very utilitarian terms. Iski bande ki is, what is the utility of this person? So the more you look at human beings in utilitarian terms only, the more problems you create. So that is why Hume tries not to fall into the utilitarian space alone. I'm not saying utilitarian space is not important, but tries to engage with human beings in their humanity. And the fact is that no one will ever know anyone in totality. To be able to say this is the right thing, I think is a bit of a crap. We have to live with uncertainty. And the only emphasis which Hume gives is that we can give you openings for dialogue to understand, no matter what the instrument throws up, is only a trigger for dialogue. And I hope this session may have given you some triggers to think a little bit about yourself and your own organization, your own context, your own system, and see what is the present nature of your interface and how can you reconfigure this interface to be more enriching and meaningful both for yourself and for the system to which you belong. I've taken more than 4 lines, Aishwarya. Apologies.
No, please. Okay, we have one closing question. Roop, would you want to take that? Anuradha has sent in a question.
Would you say Hume helps in creating greater awareness of self and our systems, and hence tells us what we can do about it rather than feel troubled by it? My one-word answer was, yeah, exactly. Ashok?
That's right.
So I just, that statement shows the success of the session.
All right. Thank you, Aishwarya. Thank you very much.
I'm glad this has been great. And I think our audience has also been able to draw out their resources and take the perspective from this session in the way that we, of course, wanted it to be delivered. So thank you to both of you for taking out the time. Thank you to all our attendees for joining us in. And yes, this has been great. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts and questions with us. This has been great. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Ashok. Thanks, Coacharya. Thanks,
Thank you,
Aishwarya.
Roop.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.